So welcome back to the Women in Data Takeover stage here at Big Data London. I promised you earlier you're in for a treat, and it's our second speaker of the afternoon. It's Tess Merkulova. You'll see a theme that started with the Women in Data Takeover today. This is about the humans in the process. This is about the women who are leading from the front and delivering capability, people, culture, and outcomes for data. So I'm going to hand over now to the brilliant Tess Merkulova. She's the Data and Technology E-commerce Director for Europe for Pepsico. Welcome, Tess.
Thank you. Oh, wow. Okay, that works. That's great. Really takes me back to my musical theater days, you know, the headset, the hand gestures, the things. Anyway, welcome, and I hope you're having a wonderful first day at the Big Data London. I hope you caught the talk from Robin right before. It's been absolutely brilliant. I've heard her speak a few times, and such an impactful and important story. So humbling to follow her up. I'm going to give it my best, but I'm going to pivot it a little bit. I will tell you about me, and I'm going to tell you about things that I've done and things I've experienced, but it's all going to be with a focus on the questions. And there's been a few panels and discussions that I've been on around today, and it all coming back to a few people asking, well, are we actually asking the right questions? So this is really what it's all going to be about. But I'm a nerd, and I love to read, so I'm going to structure it as chapters, very, interestingly. But anyway, hi, my name is Taisiya, as you saw in a previous slide, but I've been going by Tess for the majority of my life at this point. And as I've been thinking about, well, how can I introduce myself to you guys and make it a little bit more fun? My parents are visiting me at the moment for the next few months. So for anyone who had parents staying with them for a prolonged period of time, I know you know what I feel like at the moment. But, I'm taking a little bit of a break to jazz it up. But the good thing about having parents staying over with you is that they bring the mementos from your childhood. So enjoy. This is me taking a break from faxing important documents in my mom's office. And I'm pretty sure a 5-year-old should not be faxing anything to anyone. But taking a break to make a few important phone calls, as you can see. And this picture can tell you a few important things about me as I was a child and adult I am today. Number one is I've been a workaholic from the young age. Number two is that I'm fantastic at multitasking. And number three is that I've always had a killer sense of style. I mean, look at that hair, look at that hair. Can't beat that. But what this picture doesn't tell you is that I had always two very big passions of mine, and that is problems and trying to find solutions for those problems, so to build things. And some might argue it's genetic, given I was born to a family of 2 nuclear engineers, so rapid problem solving is a kind of a big deal in that field. But, the bigger and the more ambiguous the problem was, the more excited I would get by it. So when it came to the time for me to pick a new problem just for me, I decided to go and try to solve a very small problem of democracy. Keeping expectations relatively low for myself from the get-go right there. But I've spent years and years in doing research and publishing papers and doing dissertations on the topic of democracy. And I was debating with myself, and I was trying to source as many opinions, as you can get, to work out what is everyone else missing? Can I find a new and different way to quantify the democracy and what's happening, like beautiful mind moments of just massive diagrams and trying to find something different that someone else has missed. And after doing it for a good 5 or so years, I figured, well, I can either carry this on and maybe have an analysis paralysis at some point, or I can move on and do something else. So I've left, didn't go too far, decided to go international development and try to measure if the world's becoming a better place through international humanitarian projects. Again, kind of low bar for myself. But being a lone researcher for quite a while, I figured, let's move on. I need something more. I need something bigger, something more agile and faster paced moving. So I went to the industry. So I went to programmatic. And if you're not sure what that is, it's every ad that you've ever seen and that followed you online, that's that. So you're welcome. And I stayed there and did a bit of e-commerce, and I've changed different context of the problems that I was doing, but it was always problems and it was always the solutions. And it was always me trying to encourage my teams to do the same. So all of our peers always called us professional problem solvers, and we kind of got a kick out of it, like validated, nice. But you might wonder, why am I telling you this great story so far? Fantastic. And the reason for that is because I wanted to set the scene for a question dash a problem that got posed to me early in this year. A friend of mine and I have been doing laps, traditional walks in the Greenwich Park. It's been a kind of a cold winter morning, gloves, mugs of tea, and we've been debating over the product that we have been working on at this point in time. And we were missing something. It was very close to roll out, but something was just not right. And we kept going and back and forth. Well, what is it? What is it? You know, like we're missing something, we're missing something. Then a friend of mine turned to me, and here's a direct quote with citation. Wouldn't the world be a much better place if we just asked instead of assuming and then agonizing over what ifs afterwards? You know, not a dramatic question, very pointed, and I'm sure we'll kind of come back to it every once in a while ourselves. But it got me to think, well, you know, I switched from academia and then I've been in a kind of professional environment for quite a while, but how many times did I actually did a disservice for my teams, to my peers, to my customers, internal or external, because maybe I've been leaning too much on my own knowledge and too much on my own assumption. I didn't ask, and I didn't ask early enough, and I didn't ask the right questions. So I put my academic hat back on, started doing a little bit of research, went down the rabbit hole of internet as you do. So as a result of that, you're welcome, quotes. Everyone has to have quotes, so there they are. But what I kept coming back to is, well, you know, back in academia, you write a paper and you state your assumption, and then your argument flows, your hypothesis, your theory, your analysis, etc. But in real life, we don't necessarily come to the table when we talk to people with, here are my assumptions, and then we carry on the argument. We keep our assumptions to ourselves. So then do we basically create a breeding ground from all the different biases that we have in our heads, and then every single person at the table has that, so we're not necessarily talking about exactly the same thing. We're just talking kind of in parallel, and we're sort of moving the right way, but are we really solving for what people are asking us to solve? Did we actually dig deeper to understand what are the people not telling us, and we just assume that we got it because we got the first piece of information, we latched on and we ran away with it because we're the experts, we know, right? With data, with tech, we've done it, we've seen it. It's all shouldn't be novelty so much. So that's my preference in terms of where the next chapters are going to go. And I wanted to walk you through a few examples where I really understood the power of asking the right question, the right time, and actually persisting with it and hearing instead of just listening, and what the trajectory changing tool that can be, right? And we're going to start with, why do you want that job? So I do not know how often you have it, but I quite frequently ask myself, why am I doing this? Whatever this can be, a task, a job, you know, being in the gym and trying to pretend that I want to be fit and all of those things, and be like, oh, why am I doing this? And it's almost a scream into the abyss that we don't necessarily want to respond back to us. We're already at our wit's end. We're kind of done. You know, and there's always that couple of times a year that I'm sure all collectively there is a massive groan of, why am I doing this, when the performance conversations start, or assessments, etc. No one really enjoys those, but it's not the point. What I wanted to tell you is the story of quite a far back. I was in a job and I was doing quite well. I worked out everything there is about the topic that I was doing. I was performing very well. My peers were telling me that I was doing fantastic. My management was telling me that I'm doing great. But something was missing. It was starting to get repetitive. It was starting to just, the excitement wasn't there. The passion wasn't there. Yeah, you kind of, you know, I was doing it, but I wanted that passion back. I wanted that sense of excitement back. So I decided to take a look at it, and I'm like, well, okay, well, mastered the craft, supposedly, doing great, fantastic. So I should level up. I should go for promotion. I should ask for promotion, because that's a logical step. That's what we see over and over again. And, you know, I saw my parents, you got a job and then you stay in the job and you promote. Whether it's the right thing or not, that's not the point. That's what you do. So I went to my then manager during one of those conversations and said, well, you know, I think it's time. It's time. I think I should be promoted. I got a very polite response that I'm sure every one of us have heard and given at some point of, everyone's being considered. We'll let you know once it's done, and then we can have this conversation afterwards. I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. So we had the conversation, without having a conversation, when everyone went back to the places where we started from. No one have learned anything, nothing changed whatsoever. Instead, what I wished the way that conversation has gone is they would sat me down when I said that I wanted to be promoted and I wanted to do that job. They would ask me, but why do you want to do that job? Why that job? Why not another job? What is this about this specific thing that you want to do? And I kid you not, I would have given them a very terrible answer and probably ruled myself out of that promotion conversation to start with, because it's not that I didn't really want it, but it wasn't actually aligning with where I wanted to go. But I made an assumption that that was the only right way for me to go, so I should go for it, right? I closed myself in a box. I closed my mindset. I didn't interrogate it in any possible way. I made an assumption and the only logical conclusion I could see. And no one has tried to disturb that out of me, right? But if they asked me those questions, I would have probably come out of that conversation with much more knowledge about me and what I wanted. I would have probably understood what I do not want, because asking what don't you not want to do is sometimes more powerful than what you do want to do, because it helps you sift through all the things that you don't enjoy. And my manager would have learned something about, hopefully, themselves as well. So we would have grown together. It would have been an important piece of the conversation, but also we would have started building a much more inclusive environment where we felt like we could have these conversations and challenge each other and actually break through our assumptions that we made about each other. Because just because someone appears to be doing well or maybe not well or something else does not mean anything unless you start digging and asking those questions. So when I started getting my own teams and mentoring and coaching people, I'm sure you did too, a whole number of aspirations. I want to be a manager, I want to be a data scientist, I want to be a machine learning engineer, I want to be anything and everything under the sun and the moon. But the meat of those conversations only start when you ask, but why? And you probably need to double down on that more often than not and ask it from very different very different angles, because then when the answers come out. I've heard anything between, I want to be a manager because it's going to connect me help with people. Will it? Don't know. Maybe not. I want to be a machine learning engineer because that's where the cool projects are. I don't particularly care about it, but that's what sounds cool and buzzwordy at the time. Well, is that, right aspiration? You tell me, Some just because they want to do a job because it's going to pay them more. Some want to do a job because of something else, or there's nothing else to do. Some might just go for it, right? But unless we have these conversations with ourselves, with the people that are surrounding us, and we challenge our notions and we challenge our assumptions, we can never get down to the true motivations of why we're doing the things that we're doing. So we can never have truly transformative teams that move together, that have the unique and the same set of values and going on a journey together and have a mission of not just producing models or producing reports or piping data or doing whatever it is, but they actually want to do better themselves and for everything that goes around them. So it's not easy to have these conversations. It takes time, it takes practice. It's very much a muscle that you need to learn how to use at the right time. But if you do, it can really change careers. I had multiple reports coming out of conversations like this and actually realizing they're in the wrong industry or they're doing a wrong job, and that's okay. It's okay to pivot, to align with what actually speaks to you and to do what is that you want to do. So challenge number one, ask your people and keep asking your people, and not once a year, not twice a year, continuously have those conversations. Don't assume that everything's figured out and just because someone told you one thing, it is the absolutely one thing. Keep digging into it until you can actually have an honest relationship with them. So that's number one, and that I'm going to move on into my next chapter, and that is, why are we maybe still building this? I'm very faulty at this. I used to very much carry on doing things just because I've started doing them, right? Invested amount of time as to my passion, money, whatever it is. I used to, I kid you not, finish every single book I started. I might have hated the first chapter, but I would carry on. This used to be my thing. I finished books. I finished what I've started. It used to be like the tagline. Now thinking at why did I do that? What was the purpose? I've just wasted X amount of energy that could have gone into something far more productive, but no, needed to finish it. Right? And that's your sunk cost fallacy or your IKEA effect. Welcome to that one. That was a new one that I worked out, is we place much more emphasis on the things that we create because they're ours, because they mean something to us. It's personal at all times. And anyone who's ever built or created anything probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. So quite frequently in my career, I found myself being faced with what you might quote unquote call a problem child, right? You come in somewhere new and they give you a thing that might not work too well. It might be a process, it might be a tool, it might be a data platform, it might be something, but it's just, something's just not right. And you knew you're going to question everything, you're going to dig into it, and you're going to keep asking. And then you're going to understand, you're going to keep going, well, why you did it this way? Why'd you do it that way? Why'd you do this or this or that? Right? And then the hope is you, the expert, you walked in knowing everything that there is to know on the topic so you can fix it, right? And you want to make your marks. You're like, yes, I do know what I'm talking about. And I heard what you said, and I'm going to fix it. So here comes a few stories of mine when exactly that. So I came into a job and I got asked, we need an attribution model. If you're not sure what that is, it's basically a way to determine which marketing channel performs better. You can make them very simple, you can make them overly complicated, it's a black box, no one can figure out what's going on. We're like, okay, I got it. I've done it before, I've been around them, I used them, I know everything there is to know. Thank you, I got it. We'll see you in a few months with a finished product. And we went away. We debated as our tech team on all the different merits of how to do it, etc. We decided to go with the complicated route, right? Because it's sophisticated, it's mathematically beautiful. Let's go with that, right? Surely our clients, internal clients, will very much appreciate it. And then we decided to go beyond that. Let's build them UI, let's build them a report, let's keep building on top of that. And then we went back and we presented it to them. We were very proud. I gave myself a pat on the back, delivered what they asked for. And to my shock and horror, they were like, good, but how does that help me now? That's not what I wanted. No, but you asked for attribution model. Here's your attribution model. They're like, yeah, but that doesn't do what I wanted it to do, right? And hold that thought. Another time, another place, similar story, right? Oh, okay, we have all of these sets of BI tools and they kind of work, but not so much. I was like, well, okay, but why don't they, right? I'm new, I'm trying to work it out. And they keep, and the response I got back is, well, our internal customers tell us that it doesn't fit their needs. I'm like, okay, well, why are we then carrying on building it and not doing something else? Well, because we started building it, so we're going to keep building it. We're just going to throw more training at them. We're going to try to get them to change their process, but this thing works. This thing is the best thing. I'm like, okay, great, but they tell us that that's not what they want. Like, no, but they don't really know what they want. So kind of the moral of the story, if you will, right? Especially once you do something long enough and you have an experience in it, etc., you assume that you know everything. You do not need necessarily a full set of information. You do not need all the nuance. We take the first piece and we run away with it. And while someone's still telling you about the problem they want solving, we're already in our own plane of working out the next way to do this and this offshoot and the next iteration. And then there's going to be a UI, and then it's going to be interactive, and then it's going to predict everything beyond the sun and the moon, and it's going to be great. But what do you want again? Report? Nah, forget the report. Let's do it this way. And then no one can end up using it, right? So instead of actually sitting down and questioning and understanding what our customers are telling us and not telling us, we decide to over-solution for them, and we end up creating a very big divide between the business, the stakeholders, and the developer, the tech teams, because we didn't fully understood. We assumed we knew everything. We assumed we've done this before, so it's going to be exactly the same solution over and over again this time because we're the experts, right? But in reality, if you were to sit down and ask the question with an intent to actually hear and not just reaffirm what you wanted to already know, not reaffirm the way you wanted the solution to go, the outcome would have been completely different. The amount of investment might have been gone somewhere else. You might have developed a completely different thing. And in fact, most of the successful products are being developed together with the customers and with truly understanding them. And we place a lot of emphasis on product managers doing it for us, but I think the challenge is to bringing all the tech teams together with us. It's getting them to understand what is not being said and how do we have these conversations much more productively. And it's not only until I was both on a tech side and a business side, I truly understood how frustrating it can be to be so completely misunderstood by the people that are trying to build or fix something for you. Because the people on the other side think that they know your problem better, but they never truly actually got to the bottom of it. They took a little bit of it and then figured out their own solution. And that happens quite often and quite frequently. But I'm going to wrap up on this. I'm sure I could ramble on for multiple other different stories of where questions weren't asked, therefore the solutions weren't correct, or jobs were given incorrectly and people left, and etc. I'm sure there's plenty of those in the room as well. But what I really would like for all of us to try to get to is the asking questions is not a tick box exercise. It's not just because we have to do it. You need to be able to actually want to know what the other person is saying and not saying. Some will tell you right away, you ask them an open question and they will ramble on for God knows how long and tell you everything that they have ever wanted. Others will not do that. Others might be a bit jaded. They might need a bit of guidance, but not through leading questions, but actually trying to engage with them and build that trust and build that connection, because that's when actually truly magical things come out. So because we started on jokes, we're going to end on one as well. So if I can leave you with one key takeaway from my side, is always ask them to tell you why. Thank you.
Tess, thank you so much. And I'm sure everyone agreed that, again, was just so honest in sharing. We've all been in those positions. You mentioned it a number of times today, so thank you for that. Tess is also recognised as one of our 20 in data and technology within Women in Data. You were one of our 20 in data from 2018, shot by the brilliant Same 7, and our alumni will become 100 this March, on 9th of March, 2023, at our annual conference. If you aren't already members, men, women, everybody, it's a place of belonging. We ask you to sign up. Before we go to questions, we have our Women in Data stand behind the theatre today. So if you haven't been to see the team already, can I ask you just to swing by and say hi? And you can register there to become part of our community. So do we have any questions for Tess? This happens every time, Tess. People warm up to it. Can you sing Tell Me Why whilst we wait for it?
Oh, no, please don't do that. I have been out of practice for far too long. My musical days are way, way behind me at this stage.
Oh, we've got a question right at the back. Bear with me a moment.
No worries.
Hi. I have a fairly new analytics team within the business that I work at, and I'm constantly asking them to tell why. One of the challenges we always get back, though, is ask why, and they'll say, oh, because it needs to be in a dashboard, or, oh, because the clients asked for it. Kind of, how do you break down those sorts of really unvaluable why answers to actually really delve into the pure reason why they need it and the value it'll bring?
I always start with asking about not necessarily why, but tell me what the problem is. So what is the actual thing you're trying to solve? We can find what the solution is. It can be a dashboard, it can be whatever. Tell me what the problem is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that question. It can be, tell me about when you were missing what we're trying to create for you. What was that situation, right? So what was that time when, this didn't work very well? So if you could do it all over again, how would you do it? So it's almost create situations for them, because through that you can then start digging into, okay, well, now let's unpack this a little bit more, let's unpack that a little bit more. And that's when you start getting what people are not telling you, or what the actual rationale for what they're trying to solve. And it's a very hard balance between asking those questions without making people feel like they're being interrogated, and actually trying to get to the bottom of it. So I would say it's a mix between a yes and no questions and an open-ended questions. And it's very hard, especially now within, everyone's digital and people might have cameras on, people might not have cameras on. It's very hard to read body language. But you need to adjust the questions depending on the response as well that you're getting. If someone's starting to shut down, you need to change the tactic of what you're trying to ask as well. But yeah, open-ended questions, why do not always lead at all times, despite what Backstreet Boys are singing about, do not always give you the answer that you want to hear.
Thanks, Tess. We got any more questions? One at the back again. Goodness, I'm going to stay down this end. Bear with me, Mo.
10,000 steps, right?
I know.
Thank you, Tess. That was a great talk. And my name is Marvin. And I wanted to explore the theme that you made about the sunk cost fallacy. So I'm not as much of a reader as you, but I have been reading Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and he does cover that point. And I was just wondering, in your opinion, how do you strike the balance between realizing when something is a sunk cost and when you should instead be exercising and practicing discipline and perseverance?
This is going to sound very cliche, but it's all about the why again, right? Are you doing something because it still fits the mission and the vision, or have the mission and the vision have changed, therefore you need to pivot? And yes, we might have invested, but then let's take it apart and see salvageable and what you can take further and what you kind of unfortunately need to get left behind. Because at the end of the day, everything that we do and everything we build or create needs to drive the value. And if it doesn't anymore, then yeah, we can continue with it, but it doesn't really going to get you anywhere. It's just going to be a thing, right, that sat on the shelf that has our sticker name on it, and then everyone has forgotten about it. So I think it's continuously keep coming back to, did we ask the customer if that still aligns? Because time passes and things change and new information comes in. But we sometimes very frequently jump to the first set and we keep it because that was the original request. But we don't check in if any information have adjusted. So we don't ever come back to actually, well, are we still on the right track? How can we pivot and how do we correct?
Thanks, Marvin. Have we any more questions? Okay. So the Women in Data Takeover is going to continue to keep on giving for us all, and we're back here in another 10 minutes. After Tess, we then have the wonderful Sinead Hemming, and Sinead is going to be talking about how you've got to pivot your career, just like your products, how I got into data. So Sinead is a phenomenal data leader working for Virgin O2. She's going to be sharing some candid stories on her career transition and pivoting into data. So please come and join us in 10 minutes' time for Sinead Hemming. Thanks.